Your plant looked perfectly fine yesterday, and today its leaves are hanging, the stems are bending, and the whole thing looks completely defeated. If you walk in and see this heartbreaking collapse, your first thought is probably that you killed it, and naturally, your immediate instinct is to grab a watering can to try and save it. But according to thousands of real plant owners sharing their emergency saves online, rushing to pour water into that pot is often the exact action that seals the plant's fate. Plants use the exact same visual distress signal, drooping, to communicate entirely opposite environmental crises. Issues like overwatering, underwatering, sudden cold shock, and light starvation all look nearly identical from the outside. This structural collapse is a mechanical failure, one that requires translation before you take any physical action. Take a crowdsourced case of a pothos plant. Its vines were sagging like wet spaghetti, looking completely finished. The owner assumed it had root rot, but another user suggested picking up the pot. It felt practically weightless. The soil looked dark on top, but deeper down it was bone dry. This diagram shows a cross-section of a healthy plant cell. Notice how it is completely filled with water, pushing firmly outward against the cell walls. This internal hydraulic system is called turgor pressure. Turgor pressure is the force of water inside the cell that keeps the plant rigid and upright. When the water supply in the soil dries up, the plant draws down its internal reserves. Watch what happens here. The internal liquid depletes, the pressure drops to zero, and the cell walls instantly cave inward. The leaves literally lack the physical structure to hold themselves up. But because this is a simple plumbing issue, the fix is immediate. The owner soaked the pothos, letting water run completely through the pot. The roots drank, refilled those depleted cells, and the plant literally reinflated like a balloon. In cases of pure dehydration, a catastrophic-looking collapse is just a temporary loss of internal pressure. Supply the water, and the structure recovers in a matter of hours. Now, look at a different case involving a peace lily. It displayed the exact same limp leaves and sagging stems as the pothos, but in this case, the soil was entirely saturated. This diagram shows a plant root system underground. See those clear, empty spaces between the dirt particles? Those are oxygen pockets. Roots require constant access to oxygen to survive and to pull moisture up into the stem. When a pot is overwatered and lacks proper drainage, stagnant water completely floods the environment. It physically erases all those empty air pockets. Without oxygen, the roots start suffocating. The plant can no longer absorb liquid, even though it is completely surrounded by it. Adding water to an already saturated pot accelerates the suffocation. Visual symptoms alone cannot dictate your treatment, and water isn't the only variable controlling a plant's physical architecture. In another instance, an indestructible snake plant began leaning heavily to one side, almost collapsing entirely. The soil moisture, however, was perfectly fine. This diagram illustrates phototropism. Phototropism is a biological process where a plant actively grows and stretches its cells toward the nearest source of light to maximize energy absorption. Notice how the cells on the dark side of the stem elongate rapidly to force the bend. When a plant sits in dim lighting for too long, it aggressively stretches toward whatever light it can find. This desperate stretching physically thins out the stem. Eventually, the weakened base mechanically buckles under the heavy weight of its own upper leaves. There is one final invisible trigger to watch out for. A Monstera owner woke up to find their normally massive, rigid plant drooping entirely over the side of its pot. The room's heater had turned off overnight. Plants are highly sensitive to sudden thermal shifts. An abrupt drop in temperature temporarily freezes their internal cellular processes, causing an immediate droop. Once the room warmed back up, the Monstera's leaves gradually stood back up on their own. A drafty window, a blocked vent, or a recently moved pot. Microscopic shifts in unseen environmental factors trigger massive, immediate structural failures. Successfully reviving a collapsed plant requires you to override your emotional panic. You have to pause and conduct an objective observation before you reach for the watering can. Experienced growers recommend a simple 3-step triage. First, use the touch test. Probe your finger a few inches below the topsoil. If it's bone dry down there, the plant needs water. If it's wet, you are likely dealing with root suffocation. Second, do the weight test. Physically lift the pot. A pot devoid of internal water feels surprisingly light, giving you an immediate gauge of the unseen volume of moisture trapped inside. Finally, check the environment. Did it lose sunlight, catch a seasonal draft, or sit near a heater? Once you identify this specific environmental variable that caused the mechanical failure, you can adjust it. And the timeline for recovery is often surprisingly fast, with many plants perking up within a single day. A wilted plant is using a highly effective biological communication system to signal for help. It's waiting for a specific, calculated intervention.